As you can see, we don't yet have a doorknob on our new garden shed. It can be pretty scary to drill a big hole in a nice door like this, but we're going to show you how. When faced with putting a new lock set in a slab door like this, the first thing you have to do is decide where to put the knob. Commonly, you center it on this intermediate rail. Now, we have plans to make this into a Dutch door, which means we're going to cut it in half and the top and bottom will swing independently. So we're going to mount the doorknob a little lower to give us room for that cut. The other thing you need to consider is how far the knob is going to be away from the edge of the door. 2 3/8 and 2 3/4 are most common. On an exterior door, 2 3/4 is a better option because it gives you more room for your knuckles to pull the door shut. However, when you have a very narrow door like this one, 2 3/8 is a better option because it better centers the knob on this narrower style. So that's what we're going to do. Fortunately, all lock sets come with some kind of template to mark the door for drilling. So we're going to cut that out and put it on the door and make a hole. So I just finished putting my template on the door. I'm marking the center of these holes that indicate where I'm going to put my hole saw. It's important to do this so that hole saw doesn't move around when you start drilling or it can damage the door. I've put the scratch awl in the mark for an 1 3/4 inch thick door because that's the thickness of this exterior door. Most interior doors are 1 3/8, which is this mark here. So here we go. Then I'm going to remove the template. Ordinarily, I'd use a corded drill for this because it's such a big hole, but I'd have to run 200 feet of extension cord up to this shed, so I'm going to make this cordless drill work. And I'm going to make sure that that pilot bit is centered. My pilot bit is through, so I'm going to switch around. So you can see my pilot bit pop through the other side here, so I'm going to use that to locate this, and I'm going to drill from this side. All right, you can see I have my indentation that I made earlier with the paper template. So I'm going to put my spade bit in there and start it up. Now the important thing here is that you got to make sure this bit is level and straight. This manufacturer provides both a square corner and a rounded corner latch. The rounded corner one is if you have a machine prepared door, they're going to use a router, it's going to have rounded corners. We're going to mortise this one with a chisel, so we want a square corners. So I'm going to use my screwdriver to pop this off and swap it with this one. Now, I'm going to use this to lay out the mortise, and I find it easy to screw this in position to keep it from moving around. So I'm going to use my scratch awl once again to mark the center of the holes. And I don't want to strip it, I just want to keep it in the right spot, so I'm not going to go crazy tightening those screws until I get it mortised. Okay, that's holding that there. So now I'm going to get my utility knife from my tool belt and trace around this. I'm going to go real light at first so I don't make a mistake. Okay, so I've gone around this, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. Now I'm going to remove the latch, and then I'm going to use my chisel to mortise it, and the depth should be that thickness. So I'm going to use the knife mark to register the location of the chisel, and I'm just going to make it a little deeper. And I'm going to start at the bottom, getting my fingers out of the way. I'm always chiseling toward that bore, because if I slip, it's not going to do damage. If you go the other way, there's a possibility you could go past the mortise and mess up the edge of the door, which I really don't want to do. So you just got to take your time. All right, let's see how we're doing. Okay, I got to go quite a bit deeper. Now you heard me say earlier that I'm always working toward the center, but now that I have this partially mortised, there's less likelihood I'm going to go past the mark. Let's see how we're doing again. I want to call that good. It's important to put this strike in the right way. The slope side goes toward the jamb. I'll put the screws in the holes I made previously. I really don't like to use a cordless drill or an impact driver to run in these screws. It's just too easy to strip the screws with. Okay, so this is a passage set, which means it doesn't lock. But these knobs all go together similarly. There's a half, and they fit together. So the hard part is lining up these screws. This one went right in. Some of these knobs, the knob itself is not removable, so you kind of have to work at an angle to tighten these screws. But this is a nice design. So you put this all together and then put the knob on. And there's a hole here that corresponds to a set screw there. And they give you this nice long Allen wrench. Do the other side. Once again, line up the set screw. All right. Cool. That does it for the knob. Now this is the hardest part of the job next. We need to locate this strike so it corresponds exactly with the latch over on the jamb. Now there's a couple ways I've seen people do this. You can put lipstick on here or chalk. Truthfully, that method works better when you have a deadbolt, which is flat. This angled one, it's tough to know what part is contacting, so you locate this exactly. So I find it easier just to close the door. I'm going to slide in a combination square, and that's going to tell me where to place this on the jamb. So I'm pushing that up to the latch. I'm holding the door closed, and I'm tightening the combination square, and I'm looking to see that the door is really closed, because you want to have a little pressure on that weather strip. Okay, so I'm going to open this again. And this depth should correspond to where this tab goes. Cool. So I'm going to flip this over, put it on my mark. I previously marked the top and bottom of the strike, so that tells me where to locate it vertically. And the mark I just made with the combination square tells me how to locate it front to back. That looks good. So you can see my mark here. I'm going to drill a hole now, and that's going to provide clearance for the latch. And it's the same bit that I used on the edge of the door. You just want to be careful that you don't mess up the weather stripping. Cool. Now, I'm going to screw this in place temporarily before I mortise it. This pine is soft enough that I can just run the screws in with the screwdriver. And like I said earlier, I prefer to use a screwdriver rather than an impact driver or a drill for this job, because it's just too easy to strip or mess up the finish on these screws, especially if they're brass. Let's see how this works. Sweet. Now that I know that my strike plate lines up with the latch on the door, I'm going to mortise the strike plate flush with the door jamb. I'm going to first trace around it with the utility knife and then chisel it away, just like I did with the latch on the edge of the door. Once that's finished, this job is done.